recorder says a little different time, but my clock says 12:02 p.m. So it's Wednesday, July 17th, 2013. This will be July's monthly meeting of the Public Safety Committee of the Anchorage Assembly. I'm Paul Holman, the chair, and joined by my colleagues on the committee also.
I'll read that.
Dick Durante.
And we're on record, we're recording, so anything you say, of course, will be on the recording. So we do have the police chief. If you just want to go around the table and introduce yourself, we don't, it's like
Mark Mew, APD.
Al Mills-Bonney with the Area Community Council.
Jim Mignola, Anchorage Fire Department.
Can you mention?
Yeah, Patrick Reinhardt with the Governor's Council on Disabilities and Special Education.
Very good. And we're expecting someone likely from the Alaska Community Action on toxins, hopefully sometime. And we may run out of someone from OEM or HHS. Regrettably, Ernie Hall, also on the committee, is unavailable to be here today, so we'll proceed without him. And in the interest of time, I know, Chief, you said you had meetings as well as Chief Mew. So if you, Chief, if you want to fire.
Go ahead, you outrank me. And you got a gun.
Okay, well, let's talk about guns. We've altered our policy. We're taking a good hard look at our officer involved shooting. We're also, this is going to sound scatterbrained, but it's all kind of part of a bigger package. We've also hired our new communications director. We're starting to stand up our new method of communicating with the public through the media, and we're trying to be way more proactive and more transparent in a lot of the things we're doing. We're talking more about ourselves, about our policies, about what we're thinking about things. And so the first big topic that has got us exercising our approach has been these officer-involved shootings, and it's been painful. I don't know if we got it just right, but I never would have thought. I mean, for the last year, I've been hearing nothing but this department's out of control. The Justice Department's going to be down here next week. And we changed our policy to try and contain a piece of this puzzle. And all of a sudden, I'm not giving the cops the tools they need to do the job. And I got a talk show host that says, I actually watched the police department make the arrest the other night, and we shouldn't have captured him. We should have killed him. And
Which talk show host?
Dave Steeren.
Oh, I figured.
That doesn't
So
count.
a part of me says, though, it'd be interesting because if we don't want the Department of Justice down here, and we're doing everything we can, and I'll talk about some of that in a minute, to keep them away. But if they do come, it would be interesting for them to see that the debate isn't about the department going wild. There actually a good portion of this department thinks we need to be using more force. So that's, in a way, I sort of welcome the criticism because it will show the Department of Justice that the community is not united against the Anchorage Police Department. Maybe aspects of them are unhappy with us, but other aspects of them want us to use more force. So, I'm sorry.
Well, Chief, we've seen the huge increase in the amount of people using vehicles against police officers.
We have.
And what are we supposed to do if they're coming at a police officer with a car and that's a weapon they're using?
We're still going to collar them. We're still going to catch them. We're just going to try and do it without putting ourselves in a position where we have to shoot in order to make that capture.
Yeah, but I just don't want to put an officer's life at risk.
No, we're trying to reduce the risk. I will say there isn't any media here. I don't want to have the media reporting on our new tactics only because I just don't want to educate the bad guys as to how we're going to do this. But the situation we found ourselves in, I think. Well, first of all, let me back up and come back at it from another direction. We want to see why we're getting in more shootings than we had. We had 5 last year. We've had 5 already this year. We're only halfway through the year. And we usually have 2. So, I mean, huge spike. We want to react to these trends. I can't sit there and watch the trend increase and shrug my shoulders and say, I got to dig into it and find out if it's anything I can control. And if it is, what control can I exercise? I don't know that it's all in my control. We have made public comments to the effect that we would be studying our officer-involved shootings and talking to troopers, talking to the FBI. Troopers are also seeing an increase. The probably some things happening in the public, and we're trying to delve into that more. The university has agreed to conduct a study. That study's underway right now. Dr. Troy Payne is supervising it. I have 2 interns from the city attorney's office that Dennis has graciously diverted from other tasks. They're doing the research, the number crunching, and entering it into a relational database that Troy has built based on a New York model with some tweaking for Anchorage. And I think by this fall, we will have a report to produce to the public that finds any trends in what's getting us into these shootings and identifies them by type. Is it drugs? Is it spikes? Is it suicide? Is it mental illness? Is it vehicles? Is it knives? And there's just what are the common threads that are leading to these things? And we'll attempt to give us the opportunity to figure out if it's us, if we're doing anything differently. And so, for instance, the vehicle thing was low-hanging fruit. We'll have more to say on this study when it's done. It will be made publicly available. We'll put it out to the media. We have one media person who is on a ride-along for the study. She's signed non-disclosure agreements, and she's monitoring this whole process and will be reporting on the process of the independent study of the Anchorage Police Department. You know, it's quick and dirty, it's low budget, but I think we need to have the information. I think we need to share it with the public. And so that, we're going in that direction. It was immediately clear to us that the vehicles were a new thing in the last couple of years. Didn't need a study to figure that out. What we've got is a situation where in the past we would pursue people, we would use pit and pin maneuvers, and we get them collared up, and the fight's basically over. They would submit basically at that point. We would do what's called a felony stop from that point, and that is when the vehicle is not moving anymore. Cops get out, usually let somebody with a long gun, somebody else cover from different positions. We call them out, and we go through that routine, and we make the arrest. For reasons that we don't know why. I don't know if it's movies, social media, spice, a generation of kids that just don't care. I don't know what the reason is, but we're finding that the scenario doesn't end there anymore. There's a new chapter that these guys are writing, and that is they start banging the cars back and forth, and as they do that, they spread our cars apart. Then they peel out of the gap that they've made, and our guys are all standing around on the street in their bare hands. You know, I mean, they've already gotten out of their vehicles because that's what we used to teach them to do. Now they're in a position of being run over. They have no way to defend themselves. They only got what they've got on their hip. And it isn't working. We're shooting too many people, and it's ineffective. We're not generally penetrating the vehicles. We're firing lots of rounds. In a couple cases, we filled cars up with rounds and didn't hit anybody. So it's not stopping the cars. It is endangering passengers, though. In 2 of these events, we've had people, 3 of them, in the vehicles who may not have been wanted to be there, and they're in danger of being killed by us by accident. We had a crossfire situation develop in one of these where try and start pushing our cars around, if they push one car forward, the other car takes up the gap. The whole pin just moves around, and it doesn't go anywhere. It just moves around real tight until eventually it rubs up against a tree or a parked car or something like that. The guy can't get away if you don't let him go like this until he widens the gap. And it's worked very well for SWAT, and eventually the suspect generally realizes he's out of options and complies. And so that's the tactic that's going with the policy. Policy doesn't say never shoot. The policy just says you can only shoot in the most extreme circumstances. And it gives them that out because we can't predict every single little thing that might go wrong. If there's a car ready to launch into a school ground and you happen to be there, okay, fine. But in general, what we want them to do is slow it down after the pin, not get in a big hurry, not go jumping out of their cars before they know what this guy's going to do, and not be in a position to get run down. Instead, stay inside your crash-worthy little capsule and use that to take up the gap so he can't bang his way out. So we had this pursuit the other day, worked out fine. Patrols used that tactic. Dave Steering thinks we should have shot him anyway. It's a righteous misdemeanor, it was a drunk driver. So we think it will work. We have experts coming up to teach classes this summer. They're going to teach 2 rounds of classes. After that, there's going to be backlot training where the guys will set up on vehicles that'll be static. They'll position their vehicles and we'll practice swooping in and doing these pins. And then in the fall, when we do EVOC, we're going to get old, burned undercover cars and we're going to start banging up equipment. And
You want to replace mine, I've got a new one.
Yeah.
Ms. Gray Jackson had a question before we do, I know we had a few folks join us in the meeting, and there is a sign-in sheet, but am I understand, are you Ms. Miller?
I am.
Pamela Miller, and you're with the Alaska,
Community Action on Toxics.
okay, perfect. And sir, are you here for a specific topic or the organization? Can I get your name?
Not especially. My name is John Boggs.
John Boggs.
The Assembly's, not the Community Health and Human Services Advisory.
Oh, okay, perfect. If you want to join us, you're certainly welcome. There's plenty of seats up here in front. No one's here currently from Health and Human Services, where they pick your brain on the topic. And I think we have 3 young folks here. Are you guys
We're from Eagle River High School. We're just doing an online course for U.S. government.
fantastic? If you need a signature from any one of us that you've been in attendance, you're certainly welcome to do that for the meeting. We anticipated around an hour-ish. Welcome to stay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chief Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the update, Chief. And it's a sad situation that we're experiencing right now. And as you know, I've heard you say before that this is a trend that's happening all over the United States. And the situation here, part of it, in my opinion, is, we have a growing community. We no longer have 200,000 people, we have 300,000 folks, and a lot of folks from all over the place who are pretty bold. We're no longer immune to the types of crimes that happen in the lower 48. When I took office in 2008, I made a commitment, personal commitment, that I was going to do a ride-along every quarter. Well, I had to break that commitment because I'm scared to do it now. I really am, because of everything that's going on. I feel bad about it, that I can't do what I said I would do because of what's happening in our community. And it doesn't help any when criminals hear stuff like, oh, our police officers are retiring, I'm not blaming this whole thing on 37 because I can't do that, but I'm certainly sure it didn't help. And like I've said many times before, it's going to be open season. Folks are bold. Every time you turn around, folks are hearing about. We're talking about it as a community, though. The police are retiring. I talked about it yesterday at a meeting I was at. Folks are leaving. Folks are being recruited. This certainly doesn't help the situation at all in terms of the criminals in our community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So anyway, the point thank you, Kelly. The point I'm trying to make is we gave them a policy that is a bit more restrictive, but we also gave them a new tool. I think that new tool is going to work. If it doesn't, we'll change up and we'll give them another tool. The policy, I think, needed to be tightened. I think we would end up being punished for having that loose of a policy if we ever got sued or if the Department of Justice came in. We think we're doing everything that we're looking at all the consent decrees, and they're dropping like flies. Miami last week. There's Spokane, even the little departments that are really looking at the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Seattle, Spokane.
They're getting consent decrees?
Oh yeah, yeah. don't want that to happen. So we need to keep our house in order so that, you know, when and if someone complains, that they come down and they do an investigation, and that we can demonstrate that we have identified trends as they emerged. We have made choices, logical decisions. We're studying, we're getting data, we're bringing in studies to have people give us the right kind of data. We're watching what the courts are doing. We're applying the new case law. We're adapting our policies. We're increasing our equipment. We're increasing our training. We're doing all the things that we can think of and that other departments have been forced to do to get a handle on our own, to keep our own house in order. That's what we're trying to do. Our critics don't understand where we're going with this effort. We're not alone in this boat. This is the way of the world, but we are committed to controlling our own destiny rather than have it dictated by Department of Justice. And that's really, well, that's secondary. Really, we want to keep the citizens and ourselves safe. That's the overall driving force. But certainly being sued and avoiding being under the thumb of the feds is another motivator to try and make proper decisions.
I had a quick question, perhaps even a comment too, but one is, of course, we're curious and interested, I know I am deeply, recruitment/academy.
Believe it or not, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this, but I heard today, just this morning, that the backgrounds people are cautiously optimistic we will have a full academy. It seemed impossible the last time I met with you. I was projecting 21, I think. They were saying maybe 25. They're saying 28 now. Now, we still are going to have more retirements than normal.
Have you lost I've heard anecdotally we've lost a large number of employees here recently.
Oh, yeah, I think we've hit our 20 for this year. I didn't take a daily count today, but we can't be far off of our normal annual attrition. And so there will be more. We will have more go this year than normal. And the 28 is good news. I think we'll have more than 28 openings, so it will not bring us back. The academy will not, even if it's full, will not erase this year's attrition.
And just a reminder, I know, just refreshing my memory, about 5.5, 6 months in an academy, another 3.5 on the street in training. So even if they started like tomorrow, they're not really available to you or the community as a service provider.
Yeah, it'll be a year and a half before they're available from the date of hire.
And then they gotta make it through all those standards.
You're gonna have some air shovel on the way.
But we do have permission from City Hall to have open recruitment. And I think they conceded to, although I got to double check on this, that we may be able to hire as we identify good candidates rather than hold off until we hire 28. So in other words, if you're ready to go now, but you can't sit around for 6 months waiting for an academy, so I might hire you and just make you work in the property room or something until we have an academy.
You apply, Jack?
No, they wouldn't let me have much roll. Besides that, I can't get anything.
They have non-discrimination on age. They
Yeah, but I carry 50 caliber. I don't carry small stuff.
The academy? November 4th, I think.
He was just his illustration.
Very good. Chief, two things. Town Square, how are we doing so far this summer?
We're giving Town Square a blue enema.
Is it working?
I think so.
And then also Spice in the community. We're looking to see if there's any changes we need in the law.
Dennis is working on that. We do need changes in the law.
There is currently one operator that I know of in Muldoon that is actually put, there's a picture somebody forwarded me, it says Spice. And then on the packet it says, does not contain, and apparently it's the formula we have.
The problem is if we can do it again, Paul, but unless the state changes and they take a year to change.
What Dennis is doing is modeling the next revision just getting those cases prosecuted.
Mr. Trent?
I'm wondering if we could make him a public nuisance. We catch him selling spice after we told him he can't sell it. We can use the city to try and foreclose and shut him down.
The public nuisance abatement,
If we have to
there
do
was
it,
four
we'll use the law.
categories, yeah, we may have to do it in law.
Suck to Dennis.
He's experienced it, public nuisance abatement, but to my knowledge.
We've discussed it between the city prosecutor, the state prosecutor, and the U.S. attorney about shutting these places down because of noncompliance, and there's some disagreement between them about which entity should do it and which procedures should be followed, and I kind of half forgot now where we were on that discussion, but the notion seems easy, but the discussion so far haven't produced an answer. I'm not blaming anybody, but, and frankly, I lost track of where we were on that discussion, but it was on part of our strategy.
What you guys get a new formula, a way for us to deal with this, let us know. We'll revisit the next week. And once you got down what you want us to do with spice, just let us know, we'll do the legislation. I'd rather have him on Minnesota where we can take care of him and wait for the state to come around a year later.
Oh, yeah, we can react much quicker than the state.
You know?
I think, that, and I took Dennis and George down to Town Square last week. We talked to the SROs that were on bikes down there and the foot patrols we have in there, and I was, we're just talking, and the SROs were beating, I wouldn't say beating him up, I wouldn't say that, but we got into spice right away, and they were right on Dennis about the law, and so Dennis got an earful from the cops, from the beat cops, and so he's got renewed interest in getting Cindy to draft that language up, so.
By the way, we're introducing the 23rd, the new after-hours one for the bars. Remember the meeting we were at? It's going out to semi-members for introduction the 23rd.
Good.
See if that helps.
And just for all of our information too, and you may or may not, Ms. Franklin, actually, the prosecutor, indicated she wants to try prosecute as many crimes in the Anchorage area, that APD cases, city rather than state. So if there's a city law that also mirrors state, that they try to charge state, often they get dumped back to them anyway. But she wants to try to prosecute. In some cases, prosecutors have said, oh, I can only do DV and DUI, that was the only thing I got my staff for. Apparently, she wants to try to do everything. The prosecutor, city prosecutor, Cindy Franklin. And she said, I mean, that was her comment to me, that if she can pull it off, she wants to try to prosecute as many misdemeanor crimes in Anchorage, APD cases, rather than having to defer them into the.
Well, Cindy's retooling, and she's going to geographic deployment, community prosecution, and she's assigning prosecutors to our beats, so the prosecutors and the cops that are assigned to the same areas are going to be looking at the same cases, the same problems they got, with the exception of, it was probably probably DV. It might have been one other thing, that she wanted a centralized unit for DV, so we don't lose
Consistency. Well, one other thing too is she wants to add a component, and she's already used some of our alumni from Citizen Academy, doing like a prosecutor's ride-along, where they actually, people, once they go through this course, they've been vetted, of course, Citizen Academy, and I'm sure we can do that too, that actually set in on some of the decision-making of cases as people are arrested. There is a whole misunderstanding about how, let's make a deal, free market, things like that. So she's really trying to get more community engagement on the prosecution side too, which is good. Any? Thanks, Chief. I know you're busy, so you have to take off, I understand.
Thanks, I'll stick around a little bit, but I might sneak on.
Very good. Chief?
Good afternoon. Fire chief's out of town, so standing in for him today. I just got a few things. We have our new hire academy starting next Monday. Have 11 candidates. We had 12 originally go through the process, and one of them didn't make it through the final end of the process, so we ended up with 11. We currently have 10 vacancies, so that's one more than the current vacancies we have. We're anticipating a few more retirements by the end of the year, so we'll end up the year with some more vacancies by the end of the year. Have a new assistant chief of operations starting on the 29th this month. Position that's been vacant for about 2 years. The last year has just been due to the fact that we've been unable to find a qualified candidate. The year prior was other issues. Station 5 is operational, up and running. They moved into it there about 2 weeks ago now.
Spinard McKinnis.
Spinard McKinnis, right on the site where the old station was. So right in that area, right off McKinnis. Open house is set for September 28th at this time. the official open house. That's when we could coordinate and get everybody all together and make it happen.
Mr. Guest?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you go over that again about McGinnis? I'm sorry, I was writing and
I'm
didn't hear
sorry,
it, and that's
McRae,
my.
I said.
McRae,
it's the
sorry.
Bernard.
Yeah, I missed it.
Oh, because
I missed it
I heard
myself.
McGinnis, and that's our fire station, and I'm like, we've been going there for quite some time now, it's just not opening?
I was just
It's
skipping
all
right
right.
along and I missed it too, so.
Thank you, thank you.
Yep, yeah, it's Bernard and McRae.
You just know our neighborhood, though. Sure.
The fire department audit and dispatch study are underway, currently underway. Scheduled meetings with us, with the fire department throughout this week and with us and the police department throughout the rest of the week, next week, I believe.
I think tomorrow,
You might have it tomorrow.
okay.
And you might have seen on the news, we just recently, quote unquote, donated or sold for $1 two of our surplus apparatus. One of them was a 1983 tender that came out of Chudiak that is beyond use for their purposes anymore and doesn't meet the new standards that they're required to meet for NFPA and everything, but they work just fine for these smaller volunteer departments. We have one of them going to South Tongass, and one of the units going to Hollis Volunteer Fire Department on Prince Wales Island, all of them down there around Ketchikan. So they'll be up tomorrow to come by and pick those units up and buy them for $1.
Anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. So who's the new deputy chief, somebody in-house or outside?
Assistant chief, it's the new assistant chief of operations,
Right.
he's from outside.
And, the fire audit, tell me a little bit more about that.
This
It's not the,
was the management, started off as the management audit a while back, and then.
The outside
and then
audit.
The outside audit that
Okay.
Matrix Corporation is up doing right now for the fire department. They're looking at all aspects of the fire department.
Right.
And,
okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't confused.
no, same one.
Can you meet with them? Just talk to them? You can approach what they're doing?
I believe they're setting up meetings with the assembly members or with this committee.
Well, not that I'm thinking a big deal, but I'm the audit committee chair, so they may wanna, you know.
We also
reach out.
tagged on at the last minute because we wanted somebody to advise us on where we should go with our Canon RMS system is about to expire. E911's going to expire a year after that. Where are we going with with NG911? Should we share CAD with fire? You know, just issues like that. So it's taking a look at making some recommendations. for
Okay,
us.
that's really, really great. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, you may remember, Chief, a couple of years ago, the 911 audit that Pete did.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, and that's still on my list of follow-ups, just so you know, okay? Yeah, and so I'd love to have a little conversation with them. So, anyway, they reach out to me.
I will make sure he's in town today. I'll touch bases with him or get him an email, make sure he knows. I believe it's on their agenda to touch bases with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Real quick, like Chief, if you know, is fire department experiencing more medic runs for the spice in the community? The reason I'm concerned on this is because recently I've had members of families who have had like teens and young adults that are just really messed up on this.
You know, it's very difficult for us to report on exactly what that is because we don't diagnose. So we just treat and transport to the hospital to find out what's going on. So anecdotally, I can say, yeah, I'm pretty sure we are seeing more of this, of course, because they're seeing their numbers go up. But there's no way to actually grab numbers on that. It's very difficult. It's even difficult to obtain numbers on inebriates with alcohol because, again, we can't diagnose. We can only treat and transport.
And the other thing, I had an annual request, kind of, even though it wasn't ever authorized July 4th, fireworks. Do we have anybody injured, seriously injured? Fireworks.
We did have one. I think we did have one injury with the fireworks this year.
So if we could get just put it on the list, if you could, just if you could just send us what, and Chief, same thing, I got a couple of emails from people about lack of response and how many calls came in, and did we do any or make any arrests or cites or seize anything or whatever it is. Just if you,
We all got it.
just train.
Not the fireworks, you know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And even my professional fireworks killed how many people over 48?
I'm
So
just saying,
believe me.
but July 4th, I know we.
I know we never authorized
That's
fireworks
right.
on July 4th,
December 31st.
but you're not gonna stop people from doing that. That's the reason we went to New Year's Eve.
It's just, we get constituent requests and, you know, what being done, is there no enforcement, no one cares, we should abolish the laws, blah, 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 you complaint come to me, that Mr. I'm just kidding.
Just send it to me, I'll deal with it.
One other item real quick, Chief. The other day I was at the trainings, Academy Training Center, and especially in light of Monday and Academy started. It looks like, I don't know who it is, but I think it's like SAP, Kronos, IT, somebody is capturing pretty much your entire training center.
Yeah, the new port, the new building, the new facility there, they've captured 3 of the training rooms, that they've put in there.
Is the new Academy gonna have space?
We'll work around it.
Are they paying you anything? I'm curious, because I don't know how this is going. I mean, we're hammering out on budgets because we keep wondering why these costs keep going up and where are these costs. But it seems like you would charge another agency use of the fees.
You are correct. We were set up and ready to start running and had businesses in line to utilize those facilities and pay us a fee for them. But this was a higher priority for the municipality, we were told, and SAP and the SAP contractors are occupying more than half of the building. With no IT.
I need to follow up with that and find out what fees were.
Well, a side note, if I may.
Yes,
Chair.
please.
So we're having a half-an-hour work session on SAP, and maybe we can just ask the question
Very good.
there on Friday.
So 2 new buildings are being
That is so
SAP
wrong.
or?
The new facility, the new portion of the fire training center, 3 of the classrooms.
If you go up there, it's
There's
pretty
4.
much, we went to, normally we would meet, I say we, Public Safety Advisory Committee would meet in the new building. They were meeting in the old building because pretty much the entire upper building.
3 of the classrooms in the conference room are all designated specifically for that.
And that was right direction of downtown?
Yes, sir.
I would be okay if they're paying the money, if they're.
Well, I don't know if they're paying money for it.
That's what I'm saying, because otherwise there's a budget cost.
There
Well, I'm not
there are no
okay
IGCs.
with it.
Excuse me?
There are no
IGCs?
IGCs.
Yeah, sorry.
We're gonna address it on Friday.
Keywords. So we come back with a request to see how long this, I saw some dates that were pretty extended. Sorry to put you on the spot, thank you. And then lastly, just so you know, I stumbled across, I did a couple of, right before the 3rd of July, I think it was, I was heading down to Keene on the 4th, and I was doing some follow-up calls to constituents, and it just happened to be out late at night, it was like close to midnight, and I'm over on the east side, and of course it's daylight still, so I can see like a fence being put up improperly or something. And I'm just cruising, and I see these fireworks go off, and I drive down off Open and 10th, and of course I don't seem to be lighting anything, but I see 3 young men standing nearby. I'm sure they were just observing. So I drove by, and it turns out that one of them was a kid of a guy I know. And I said, "You guys know anybody who set off the fireworks?" "No." "Okay, well, I think it's time to go in and say," even though it wasn't technically past curfew at that point, but I think they were all underage that anyway. But so even your assembly people are still out there reminding people. No fireworks on 4th.
I got no problem with that. You got me up New Year's Eve.
I hear you. All right, well, thanks, Chief. I know you're busy, so.
Thanks. Apologize for leaving early.
Thank you. Office Emergency Management, anybody showing yet? Don't see anybody. And Health and Human Services, Mr. Locke's on the advisory committee. Normally, we have, as you see, the reports from the departments. Have you got a few minutes that you want to share anything that the advisory committee's been working on or issues that you're concerned with?
Well, yeah, I think usually Janet makes it here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not really in a position to speak on behalf of the department, but
Right.
The interest sort of from the commission in general was sort of that question of how the municipality as a whole is managing that sort of outer edge of where public safety morphs into public health, because that, of course, is sort of our key area of interest, the public health aspect in terms of emergency responsiveness, disaster preparedness. I imagine you're going to be speaking to toxics here in a couple of moments. That has a public health impact. The fluoridation topic that you all considered a while back all have public health impacts that are sort of that gray area between public safety and public health. So I just want to stay involved in that.
Have you guys ever looked at the fluoride issue? Have you guys looked at the fluoride issue?
Yeah.
What was your recommendation?
The recommendation from the commission to you all.
Yeah.
We were never officially, there was no request from the assembly for a response from it.
I'm not going to speak out of school, but a past director, I asked specifically. So for the benefit of everybody here, I did ask Ms. Engel
Mhm.
for an official response from her agency and the commission, and I was told that there would be no official response.
We would like an official
But we would like it to be.
Would you?
Yep,
Yes.
yeah.
And if we have to follow up the resolution from the assembly, that gets too messy. We'd just like to know.
Well, that's been sort of, that's,
What you think we need to do with it, because these people are not gonna go away, the crazies never do.
And
We
while
have
we're on
about
it,
6 of them.
while we're on it talking,
And frankly, I think that's the point, you know, that we need to revisit, and Mr. Cheney knows as well as I do that, you know, this happened, we had an ordinance on 4 years ago, and it was very controversial, so I think it's time to talk
I
about
have
it.
2 nights of testimony on that one.
just so you know, for everybody, I talked with the administration and Mr. Wheeler, with the chair, at the time, Mr. Hall, they are reviewing legal rulings, law challenges, legal challenges, court cases on the West Coast particularly in the last 3 years. And they're going to give us a recommendation based on their review of the challenges, the case, how the case was resolved, whether it was settled or whether it went to court and there was a hearing and what the rulings were. And that gives us a legal foundation. But we clearly need as much information as we possibly can. And this commission would be very welcome.
you're speaking to the gentleman from Public Health, from the state Public Health Department that is looking into the Ninth Circuit?
No, our municipal attorney.
Oh, okay.
Municipal attorney looks, he's looking at,
Oh, okay, sorry.
and I've asked him to specifically look at public utilities. You know, private utilities is a bit different, but public utilities, public drinking water cases where fluoride is introduced, and what were the challenges on, because you'll hear everything from, it's a medication, and the city doesn't have a prescription to, you know, to give me something I don't want to take. Well,
You'll hear them say, it's a communist plot designed to motivate you average Americans.
it's some doctrine or some document.
And there's 2
I
sides
said lots
to
of
every
testimony
story.
Sure.
to the people that take a bath in bottled water because they're afraid to go before it leaches in their skin.
You know, there's 2 sides, there's 2 sides to every story, and it just so happens that the folks who, well, one of them who constantly comes before the assembly, his behavior is really, really bad, so that doesn't give him much credibility. But it's a subject that we need to, you know, not just throw under the bus.
No, absolutely, but, and that's
In my
exactly not,
opinion.
not discounting, obviously,
Yeah.
their beliefs, it's just, you know, we want to try to legal.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else?
Just to follow up to what you all were discussing, there has been some confusion on our commission's part in terms of how to send our correspondence to you all, and what topics you all would be interested in hearing from us about, and what topics you might not be as interested in hearing from us about. So that's been some confusion on our part. I know, I was surprised to hear that Diane Engel mentioned around fluoridation. I know Janet did have or Director Whitmire did have some type of email correspondence with you all on the fluoridation topic. I think what we're a little confused about is that naturally the department has to speak on behalf of the administration's role. We do have our own opinions on the commission as well, so I mean I'd be interested in following up with you all about how to set up those lines of communication.
Mr. Training and
I would like you to communicate with this committee,
Okay.
this is a subcommittee of the assembly,
Mhm.
this is public safety. Fluoride is one of the issues, and quite frankly, I've had an issue with your director in the past who used to work for you that said, when I come to testify you, I say what the mayor wants me to say regardless of what reality is.
I had issues
I-
with the
huh?
previous director as well.
You what?
I had issues with the previous
Okay,
director.
I want the absolute truth, whether I like it or not, I need the truth. Not curved as to what the administration wants, I don't care about that.
But, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sure you realize that the commission, like every other commission, is appointed by the mayor, but confirmed by the assembly, and one of your missions is to advise the assembly and the mayor, so you need to feel free to work with us.
And I echo my colleagues, and however your regular meetings, if you have minutes, or if you want to have someone attend, is not required, but you certainly may. If there's anything you think we need to know about, that you're talking about, and the reason why Health and Human Services is on our agenda on a regular basis is we believe public health, and a large percentage of public health is part of public safety. I mean, there's all sorts of things that fall into that. So we thank you for being here, and we appreciate you bringing the information. Quick question, is your commission fully staffed? Do you have vacancies, or is everybody there?
Well, there was a change, was that last year, moving from 12 positions to 9 positions for a lot of commissions, is that correct? I think we have 9
One real quick announcement, for I see notice some people in here possibly on taxi cab issues. Briefly, the ordinance, 42, is it? 41?
The one David's ordinance.
The one that,
Whatever it is.
the ordinance that Ms. Osiander had introduced before she left the assembly on taxis was a complete, comprehensive rewrite of the existing Title 11 for transportation for taxis. And that will, it appears, will be postponed. We'll open it for public testimony because we have to, we posted it. But we're going to postpone that indefinitely, it appears, which means, what that means is it essentially goes away in the Neverland. We will be working extensively to rewrite Title 11, at least the portions we can address it, are meeting it. And we want to welcome, and we'll give you some time if we've got it, we did have some on the agenda. We will welcome the disability community, taxi drivers, community patrons that use taxi services. We want to hear from everybody, the areas that need to be improved upon, and there's certainly a host of them we do recognize. The most important for all of us is actually twofold, and one is safety of the passengers that people access the cabs, and secondly, it appears we've got a huge problem with ADA or handicap accessible vehicles availability. So we would like to address both of those. So that said, that's on our agenda. I just want to give you an idea.
Well, I think one thing, I think they are working on a substitute for Channel 11, but I don't know when it's coming forward.
And that's what we were talking about. Mr. Gates, Dean Gates, and you may know him, sir. Dean Gates is working for him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was told by the chair at a meeting, okay, that the Transportation Commission rewrote the ordinance and that they're gonna present what they came up with at the meeting on the 20th, that's what the chair told me, on the 23rd, and then it's gonna be sent to the Public Safety Committee. That's what I was told.
Well, I've got the agenda, at least the one
It's
I
not
haven't
on
seen
the
on
agenda.
there.
No, it's not, so maybe it's gonna be on the agenda,
Later on
and
the
maybe
floor.
the date that they gave me is wrong. But that's what he said.
And we were talking when we were talking about the fluoride issue. Ms. Wheeler Gates, Dean Gates was there, and we transitioned briefly into that. And he had a draft that he'd been working with the Transportation
Oh, okay.
Commission. So we were able to get a copy of that. And
Okay.
I don't know if there's a date set for the introduction, but
No, well,
we're
Chairman Hall said that we were gonna get an AIM with the document.
yes.
Not for introduction, just an AIM, presented it to us formally, and then it was gonna go to the Public Safety Committee. That's what he said, but, you know, he hasn't been around that long, so. Anyway.
Okay. Ms. Miller, reference to the Alaska Community Action on Plastics.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. I am Pamela Miller. I'm Executive Director and Biologist with Alaska Community Action on Toxics, and we're a statewide environmental health research and advocacy organization. And as you're probably aware or remember, in 2004, the Assembly enacted an ordinance with a lot of public support,
Sorry.
which required notification about outdoor pesticide applications by applicators and or the municipality. This includes a requirement for notification at least 48 hours prior and remaining in place for 48 hours following a pesticide application. It's required to be given to residential or commercial building occupants that are on properties contiguous or adjacent to the treated property. And the municipality must also post notification about applications, including in public parks. This ordinance came about because of concern from Anchorage residents that pesticides were being applied without notification, resulting in exposure without knowledge or consent. Excuse me. I think this ordinance has been successful and has provided the public with important information about proposed pesticide applications. It gives people the opportunity to take measures to prevent exposures and to protect health and the health of their families. I think it's likely that it has reduced unnecessary pesticide applications. And as an example, I know of several occasions in which neighbors, once they received notification, were able to have discussions with their neighbors and that were planning to conduct the spraying and convince them to cancel the application in favor of safer alternatives. And in 2010, a notification about a proposed herbicide application, in this case, the herbicides 2,4-D and dicamba, in Town Square Park caused a lot of concern about public health, particularly children's health, since children play on the ground and in and around the trees there. And this application was subsequently canceled because of concern for public health. More recently, this past summer, just a couple of weeks ago, a member of our organization called with concern that there was a scheduled herbicide application in Valley of the Moon Park adjacent to the children's playground and also Chester Creek. So calls to assembly members, Parks and Rec, the mayor's office resulted also in a cancellation of this application. I appreciate Ms. Gray Jackson's invitation to present at this meeting as a way to find a constructive way forward on this issue. The hazards of pesticides and herbicides are well documented in the scientific and medical literature. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the National Academy of Sciences, and the 2010 President's Cancer Panel have all concluded that pesticide exposures are linked with reproductive disorders, learning and developmental disabilities, birth defects, endocrine disorders, and certain cancers. Children with their rapidly developing brains and bodies are especially vulnerable to exposure because of their hand-to-mouth behavior. They're closer to the ground, their bodies metabolize more quickly. The Journal of the National Cancer Institute reported that home and garden pesticide use can increase the risk of childhood leukemia by up to 7 times. Mount Sinai Children's Environmental Health Director states that case control epidemiological studies have found consistent, modest associations between pesticide exposures in utero and in early childhood and acute lymphocytic leukemia, childhood brain cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So these types of cancers are consistently elevated not only among children on farms, but also in those homes where the parents spray them either in the home or in and around the yard and garden. Pesticide exposure is also linked with asthma and other respiratory diseases, Parkinson's disease, and other adverse health outcomes. The pesticide registration system administered by the federal EPA and the state is based on a risk management approach. This is highly flawed and inadequate to protect human health and the environment. It is especially insensitive to the most vulnerable among us, including children, the elderly, and those with chronic illnesses. The law simply has not kept up with the science on this matter. So recognizing the inherent hazards of pesticides and acknowledging concerns about public health, many local governments across the U.S. and Canada have been enacting ordinances to limit pesticide use in public parks and lands, as well as placing limits on private use that might affect adjacent residents, streams, and other sensitive areas. Some local governments, for example, have established policies for pesticide-free parks. Others have adopted a least toxic pest management policy, which we have in our Anchorage School District. These to limit pesticide use as a last resort in favor of safe alternatives. And others have prohibited the use of so-called cosmetic or aesthetic use of lawn chemicals on both public and private lands. We think that the use of synthetic pesticides is largely unnecessary because there are viable alternatives in the form of sustainable integrated pest management and organic practices, and these both work, they're effective, and they save money. There are studies now that show that organic or IPM managed land saves 25% compared with conventional uses of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. So I'll end my presentation there just to say that we would like to work in a constructive manner with the Assembly to look at proactive policies that protect the Anchorage public from the harmful use of pesticides. I have a number of model ordinances. I think these can range from the different types that I mentioned, preventing the use of pesticides that are associated with cancer, neurological effects and endocrine disruption, looking at least toxic pest management approaches, for example, the Anchorage School District. And again, these do save money, they reduce liability, and I think there's a lot of support for this type of policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the Assembly, the Chairman recently established a Rules Committee, and Mr. Trainey's on that committee, along with Ms. Johnson and myself, and it was established to deal with the public speaking ordinance. But, a Rules Committee, basically one of the responsibilities, the biggest responsibility, is to review legislation prior to it being presented to the Assembly. So, and we'll talk offline too about it, but my recommendation is that we get a draft document somehow, and then we have it come before the Rules Committee, right, for review, and
604, it looks like, that does at least make the notice requirement, which I do recognize going into at least public locations, and I've been in a few private businesses open to the public where they've had those postings, and I do know that that's existing, and it seems to work. The next step is, and we just talked a little bit about fluoride and the concerns of some community members, actually on both sides of the issue, really. because we
Right.
get
Oh,
interested.
absolutely.
But along that line, you do know that we live in a community that is fairly vocal when it comes to how much regulation it allows its government to impose. And so I would love to see, if possible, best practice, something you guys from your community, your group, your last community action on talks, something that you reviewed and perhaps consider as best practice or best practice 2 or 3 models. I think that would be helpful for discussion purposes to see, there's the will of the body and then there's the will of the community. Perhaps it may end up falling in one or 2 of those arenas. And that's just from my,
Well, that's why we have public hearings.
Yes.
The will of the community.
sure.
But, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I just don't wanna, I was staff for the assembly. I ran the Budget and Legislative Services Office when that ordinance was drafted by Michael Terrace, who was my utility analyst. So I remember well, and so did Mr. Trainee. And it was a lot of controversy, but I know that the decision was the right decision for this community.
Sure.
It really is, and I think, Piper and the rest of the, organizations that, kill things that need to be killed. But anyway, are okay with it, but we definitely need to readdress this issue, and I'd like to readdress it.
Yeah, I mean, they do bowl controls.
I got bowls now,
Goals.
not inside, outside.
Yes, Mr. Trainer.
Can you tell us how big your organization is, how many people belong to it? Because if we get something coming forward to us, as public support, we need to be able to tell people how many people belong to your organization.
Yeah. We have about 1,800 members throughout the state, and I'd have to go back and see how many we have within the municipality.
You can let us know, we appreciate it.
Sure.
Anything else? Mr. Millstone, briefly, you sit on the Animal Control Advisory Board.
Correct, and I think I was going to mention 3 items that we're currently
Please,
discussing that might be of interest to the committee here.
please.
Well, Title 17, one thing we have some subcommittees, maybe present a resolution regarding chronic animal noise, particularly dogs. That's a big problem that we're getting a lot of complaints from the community. Another one is animal quarantine. One particular item is canine quarantine. There's a situation where a canine was quarantined, put out of service for a few days, because required by the title. And we're trying to see if we can do a workaround to keep that canine in service, because they have all their shots and they're like a separate group than a regular run, dog. But we're trying to figure this out. Another one is loose animals, which lead into dog bites. Big epidemic lately. People are really concerned about that. My big approach to that is we only have about, I think, 5.5 officers part-time. There was a survey done a few years ago said we should have 17, and that was, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, officers. That's to enforcement. Now, a big problem with the animal control is there aren't people to be proactive. They're all responsive. Same with the police problem has, We need to have people go out there and just have more officers to help support the community. We're growing and the animal control is staying stagnant. So that's kind of the issue that we're working on right now.
Mr. Trainee has a question.
Yes.
Could you guys take a look at the issue of dogs being off leash? If
That's
they're
what-
animal control park, I have no problem with being off leash. The problem is the way Title 17 reads, they have to be under voice control or off leash, and they're not under voice control. Many times, people say it's friendly, it's nice until it bites you.
And that's a big problem because right now that's the issue.
I know.
Yeah. And all
We
the
need to
time.
rewrite Title 17. Taking a look, you guys take a look at it. We may need to rewrite Title 17 to have all dogs that are less than a dog park where they can run free to be on a leash.
We would love that.
Huh?
If you guys
I
would
know.
support that, we would love it.
The other thing is, I think with the animals that we release out of sterilization of any dog leaving that facility. We're putting them out for adoption. You guys take a look at the policy, changes we need, they have to be sterilized to be adopted out. In other words, from my perspective, I don't want a puppy going out and just breeding more puppies, and eventually come back to the animal control and care facility. I think it's the correct word for it.
Yeah, I think right now that is a policy. They have to be spayed or neutered.
But we need to make sure that's being followed.
Yeah, okay, I'll check on that, but I'm real sure because they're really good.
Thank you.
Will do.
And the other problem is the funding problem. I know we need more officers than we have on the field. Because I get complaints all the time, why don't you send us somebody to take care of this dog problem? The problem is there aren't enough officers at any given time out there. And that's both an administration problem and an assembly problem. We need more funding as we go into the funding cycle this year. We can't expect you to do the work with only 5 officers. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I want to echo what Mr. Trainee just said, because I think everybody knows that the animal control facility is a contract facility with Municipality of Anchorage. So what we need to do is increase the budget for that contract so that we can hire more folks. And you're exactly right. You know, as I say often, we don't have 200,000 people in this community anymore. We have 300,000 plus. You know, we have a growing community, and folks keep forgetting that with a growing community, we need to make changes. You know, and so I'm gonna talk with Mr. Trainee offline about this and Mr. Coleman, because of course we're getting ready to get into the budget, well, we're in the budget process right now, the administration is anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I just want to, yes.
If I could, I have the survey that was done a few years ago. I'll email to you, actually 4 people, Corny Hall also. And I think you find it very interesting. It gives a lot of stats and how they approached it. And that was a few years ago. Increase in spend. I'll email it to all you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one more comment. Do we have a recommendation from the advisory board on staffing for the animal control facility? Because if we don't, I think that.
We've had, I don't know how long ago, but it was presented years ago.
All right, well, we need a recent recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, I think that would be helpful in our argument to increase the funding.
I think this will answer a lot of questions, the survey I sent you. It's,
Okay.
It was actually contracted out to do a analysis.
Thank you.
And I just want to close on this part, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Wilson, and your attendance too. I appreciate it for many reasons, but and your continued service to the community. The commissions that support, if you will, the public safety entities, Health and Human Services Advisory Commission, obviously the Animal Control Advisory Board. We'd love to hear more from you, and I will take it upon myself as I've been remiss in making sure that I don't get you included. We'll try to include you then on our agenda dates and our time for meetings. And we would love to hear more from you, particularly the area of recommendations. We're going to be operating, obviously, as full-time as part-time guys and gals can be, but we go to many, many different meetings and get pulled into a lot of different issues, you can see. But we certainly would love to make sure we have our needs met as a community through your recommendations, because you're going to be more close to the ground in the entities that you're kind of tasked with looking at. So we appreciate continued dialogue that way, and you're welcome, obviously. I know you come to as many meetings as you can, but anyone from the advisory board, same with the commission. Am I saying that okay?
Oh, this is a public meeting.
Love to have it. I just want to make sure I'm not speaking on the committee's behalf. Mr. Chairman, I'd love to hear more from you. Briefly, sir.
One more thing, Paul.
Yes.
Please, we invite all these 7 members to come over to Animal Control and go through a facility tour.
And I've done that.
That's very educational. There's only one person that Paul has done it so far. That would be, I think, a big item for you too.
Really good.
I've been over there, I haven't been on a tour, but I've been over there.
I've been there lots of times, you just don't see me. Maybe Sandy has me there.
But we invite the whole assembly.
Thank you.
It's really great.
She's run that board for 9 years.
So I know you came on behalf of concerns about tax reform. Is there anything generally brief?
You know, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, yeah, just a couple of things.
Comment,
You know, we're kind of a coalition of a variety of different disability groups, including the Alaska Mobility Coalition, the Governor's Council on Disability Special Ed, Disability Law Center, Access Alaska, Statewide Independent Living Council. I'm a staff person for the Governor's Council on Disability Special Ed, working particularly on transportation issues. I'm also a member of the Public Transit Advisory Board for the city, have been for a while. This whole issue of accessible vehicles and being able to get cabs for people with disabilities has been an issue for a while. We've tried to address it many different ways. We got a number of different concerns. There's not enough vehicles that are, to meet some minimal standard of accessibility out there. The ones that aren't really, from what we hear from people, all that safe. We'd like to see a lot more. And we really did kind of have some input in with Debbie Osiander's bill that she put forward. We understand it kind of caught people by surprise. But we've also seen what's come out of the Transportation Commission, the one that you were talking about, the draft. We read it last week, and we think it's the opposite direction from what Ms. Osiander's bill ordinance draft would have gone. So they're really far apart. We have three major concerns. One is that there is not a lot of enforcement opportunity for people who actually do discriminate against somebody with a disability. Say you call and say, I'm in a wheelchair and I want to get picked up, or I need to go to dialysis, and they never come, and they never come. You call again and they never come. And, this becomes a public safety issue at times. Or somebody at the airport is in a wheelchair and can't get picked up, and we've heard lots of stories about people, not just visitors, but our own people here coming in and out of the state, or coming in and out of Anchorage, having difficulties finding accessible cabs, and that becomes a public safety issue too. So there's not enough vehicles, there's not enough enforcement to deal with people when they actually do discriminate. You need to us, this is an issue of kind of it's a civil rights issue. It maybe should even come out of the Taxi Cab or Transportation Commission's purview to even investigate. Maybe you should go to the Equal Rights Commission when somebody actually discriminates against somebody with a disability. And then there's the whole issue of training cab drivers and the dispatchers. There are so many different issues involving disabilities and there are people who don't communicate verbally, people with mental health issues that sometimes behavior can be mistaken as a violent response when it is just sometimes a normal response when dealing with a particular disability. So we don't think there's enough training involved with the cab drivers out there. And the way we look at this is that taxi transportation is really kind of part of the whole continuum of what we need in this community. People with disabilities in particular rely on them because, and as well as the people mover system, because a lot of them don't drive or can't drive or shouldn't drive. And so it is part of the continuum that we need and we need to look at. So we welcome the opportunity to have some input and crafting something that would really fit the needs of our community. There are communities in this country who've done a really good job on this issue, and there's no reason we can't try to emulate them.
Ms. Wiggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking for myself, I'm a big advocate of equal rights for every single segment in this community. And this is a segment of the community that deserves the same rights as the rest of us. And so it's interesting, you got to see it before we did, but that's okay. But it's going to come before, the document's going to come before this committee. And the issues that you bring up have been brought up by others too, as I'm sure you know. And we're going to work to do the right thing on behalf of the people in our community with disability, as far as I'm concerned. So just so you know, we're on that on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I echo that sentiment. Ms. Train.
If you know any towns that have done it correctly, would you let us know so we can legislation on that?
Absolutely.
Because I see a lot of taxi cab permits being issued for disabled cabs, but they don't do pickups. It's a real problem, because I've got a son-in-law whose parents live in town, they're native. One's handicapped, she couldn't even get a cab to come pick her up at Walmart. She had to call one of her family members, because none of the taxi cabs would pick her up, they waited 2 hours. That's a real problem, you can't get a cab in this town.
And some of the things that we've seen is I've seen communities where they've used federal transit dollars to buy accessible cab vehicles and then basically turn it over to a nonprofit and then turn them over to a cab companies to operate to get more out on the street. So it's because some of these vehicles are more expensive, obviously, we see that. And you can buy a sedan that's a lot cheaper and still get the same value in your permit versus one that costs, $15,000 or $20,000 more. Obviously, some kind of incentive would help in getting more vehicles out on the street. But even the ones that I was familiar with, Washington DC, they bought 22 accessible vehicles, put them on the streets in DC. What a glorious thing. And then they find that those 22 cab drivers would just ignore people with disabilities and picking them up anyway. And they caught a few. So really the whole enforcement issue about when somebody does not pick you up when they said they're going to, whether that's the dispatcher's fault or the cab driver themselves ignoring you, or a combination thereof. There's really some issues that we have to deal with enforcement to try to get things right.
Thank you.
Just a real quick commentary from the chair here for myself, and that is, I would say this, try to be as accurate as I can, because I know there's some state dollars that come in through the Moody's organization on mobility.
Last Mobility Coalition.
Yes, and they have lobbied successfully for some funding for transportation dollars, and I know not just Inc., but my understanding is, by and large, Alaska is like one of 2 or 3 states that doesn't do a whole lot as a state for transportation subsidies. So if you're on the governor's advisory board, we would ask respectfully if the governor could support legislation that could help us in that end. As you know, it's all about the dollars, and you just acknowledge yourself, sometimes we have to subsidize in a government role in order to make things more accessible, and including public transportation is huge. We're not part of the Alaska Marine Highway System, and I do know and recognize the Alaska Marine Highway System is state. So we don't know. I just want to task back.
Right.
And if my name is Chairman, I believe that it's $1 million that's in the capital budget, it's a line item that was approved, and I've been told that, well, it'll probably stay there. Are you familiar with that?
Yes,
Yeah.
very familiar.
Yeah, so it'll
We
probably stay.
advocated strongly for it to be higher, and
Right.
we got what we got. But
Right, but the way it looks is that we'll have that $1 million, but, on a continuous basis, but it may be good to continue to advocate for trying and get more as the community grows, not just this community, but throughout the state. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the funnel of federal funds that comes to the state, as you know, the Muni gets its own kind of funnel of those funds for disability transportation, senior disability. You get your own pot of funding for that. And they can put some of that out. In fact, I think they have, or it's out right now, an RFP for various transportation services. We've kind of, I've encouraged in the past, some of these nonprofits to get together with a cab company to come up with something that might work, and it hasn't happened, but we need to do a better job in advocating for an effort to really put some vehicles out there that are safe, and you have to have enough of them for it to work. I mean, if you put 3 or 4 or 5 vehicles out there for a community this size, it's not enough. I mean, if they're over in Eagle River or at the airport, and they're not, you have to have a good percentage of them for the system like that to work.
And you have to have, like you mentioned, enforcement.
Yes, to make sure that they're doing, because otherwise if there's a non-handicap call and they get tied up on that for an hour, then that delays the handicap request.
But if there's enough vehicles out there, some of that enforcement issue goes away, because there's people can respond quickly.
Okay, I think that's it on the agenda. Anything else? Okay, before we close officially, if you wouldn't mind sharing maybe at least your first name. I know you're at Eagle River High School. If you guys want to step up, I know you guys are going to need signatures, so if you just want to step up, we're going to record, and then we'll get your signatures. Each of us, since there's 3 assembly members, each of us can take one of your papers or something.
You want my name?
Just, yeah, you don't have to say your whole name if you're not comfortable.
No, it's fine. I'm Colin Sullivan.
Okay.
I'm Amanda Strammer. Samantha Strammer.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we thank you for being here. Hope you learned some about civics and government at the local level. And currently it is now 1:15 p.m. and we'll be going off record. We're ending this meeting.
So if you bring your paperwork, one of us will sign